Stafford going to the end zone, reaching up and making the grab. Odell Beckham Jr. Stafford buys time. Protection is good, and so is the pass. Henderson came out of the backfield. Jefferson in motion. Henderson, nice cutback. Stafford rolling and throwing. Caught, touchdown. Stafford caught on the run. Cup, who else? Comes out of the slot to the right.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of East Coast Rams. I am your co-host, Ashton, with my awesome co-host, Zac Mayer, and we have a special guest back again, Ramzilla. How are you guys doing?
Doing awesome. Thank you so much. Go Rams.
Yeah, things are going great. Got my fantasy team picked. Got to go watch the Bengals Rams game this past weekend. It's been a busy weekend, but great to be on and getting to chat with you guys.
Yeah, we're gonna break down that preseason game, Rams versus Bengals. But for a second, Zac, like you mentioned, you said that you were there. How was the experience? How was the fan base? I know you sat in a season ticket holder section, so I'm sure you had some interesting experiences. Just kind of lay that down for us and the listeners and kind of give us a piece of what it was like going back to a foe that we just played in the Super Bowl. So something a little weird that I haven't seen other teams do.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a cool experience. It's a preseason game, so there really wasn't much skin in the game. I got to go into this kind of relaxed, and and having that Super Bowl ring was, was a good thing to have. Just going into it, get downtown to park. There's a lot of hooting and hollering, calling "Hoo Day" every time a Rams fan walks by. I really just wanted to say "We Day" back to them, just because we just beat them in the Super Bowl. It's winning a preseason game isn't really anything special, especially since last season the Rams went 0-3 and went and won the world championship. So yeah, it was a cool experience. The fans were great. No one was really heckling us, or other than the Who Day. But the fans were great. It was. I sat in the complete section. I was completely surrounded by Bengals season ticket holders or their family who were able to get the tickets. I think they were kind of eyeing us like, what are you doing here? And it was kind of funny to just kind of tell them the story of Dad's a season ticket holder. I took the preseason tickets, and so I'm sure he'll get heckled over the next few weeks during regular season games. But it was really cool. He sits in the visitor section. So literally the tunnel, I was 2 seats over from the tunnel where the Rams, the visiting team, in this case the Rams, go in and out. So I got some really good shots and really good views of all the players.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, man. And I know I've been to a few games, and it's not. If you haven't gone to a NFL game yet, I would definitely give people go out and see it once. I know it's expensive. I've only ever been able to do 3, but it's really a great experience. And if you can afford it, I would definitely recommend trying to give it a shot. But let's kind of segue this conversation into both preseason games. We went over the first one in our last episode, and we'll kind of touch on the Texans game. And I think it's going to be a little bit more insightful going to this game, honestly. Ramzilla, what's your initial impressions of both games, touching more on the more recent one, I guess? Texans one, I don't think there's a lot to talk about there, seeing that we played mostly their first string team and not a lot of our first stringers played.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely a few standouts from that game that really impressed me. Our D-line, the depth there is really impressive. we've done a fantastic job of creating that. Jonah Williams had four tackles, one sack fumble, one TFL. He just looked dominant against their first team O-line. So that was incredibly impressive to me. We struggled. We allowed 6 sacks, which is concerning. Whether you're facing first stringers or not, to allow that many, 5 in the first half, is a concern. I won't mention names, but we definitely saw them, and there's room for improvement without a doubt. As far as the second game, versus the Bengals, again, our defensive line just balled out. You had Michael Hoyt with 1 sack. You had some good edge rush work by Keir Thomas, who had 1 sack and 3 TFLs. Absolutely impressive. Love to see our rookie 6th-rounder, Darian Kendrick from Georgia. Just phenomenal closing speed, awareness, and what I love to see is secure tackling. Textbook tackling. You could definitely, use his game film to teach tackling. As far as letdown players in this past game, this may be unpopular, but I have to admit, Bryce Perkins, although sometimes efficient, he ran and got out of the pocket maybe a little too quickly. He definitely had some opportunities to throw the ball downfield, at least from the film that I watched and rewatched. Even on the touchdown run, he had Harris coming open in the end zone. If he would have just held on just slightly longer, he had him definitely open. And kudos to Harris as well, who actually got in the way and let him get around that edge. I was surprised by Jacoby Durant. He didn't play quite as well as I would have hoped. I do know that we played a lot of off-man coverage, which I understand, but his closing speed wasn't ideal. I'm not sure if he was simply trying to just keep things in front of him, which most likely was the game plan. But I absolutely know that he can play better. I don't question his ability and his future, but getting him out there with some real live bullets and live action, definitely would love to see him continue to improve. The run game, obviously you're not game planning all of that, but when you do run a zone run scheme, it doesn't matter what the defense throws against you, unless you're running against 9-man boxes or 8-man boxes. And we did see some of that, but our run game has struggled in the regular in the preseason. Just speaking of running backs, we didn't have a rush over 9 yards. And our average, rush attempt, when you remove Perkins from, that number, I mean, our average attempt was probably like 3.1, in that low 3 range. And I've seen it across the board among some of the NFL teams. But it is something that I want to see improve and see from our first teamers. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on those 2 games. I am excited by our defensive line talent. Our defense played well, and of course, you have to talk about McCutcheon, who looked impressive in both games. He did incredibly well, and I'm looking forward to him making the 53.
Yeah, Zach. It's definitely one of those things that when you keep on seeing the body of work this defensive line is putting together, it's very impressive. Starting off with these 2 games, do you think that D-line is just great drafting, or do you think it's the presence of a player of the caliber of Aaron Donald pushing these young guys, not just with technique, but with the way they work out, with how they look at game film and how much effort they put into the game? Like, where do you think that D-line strength is coming from, and what are your other takes on these two games?
Yeah, so I think it has to be a mix of both. I mean, you have to have the players who are dedicated to watching that film and studying from the best defensive player in the league for, 5 to 8 years now. I mean, Aaron Donald is a beast, and if you are not taking your direction from him and you're not learning from him, you're not learning, just his presence, him being there, just listening to what he has to say, watching what he does, just him being there can make those players better. But if those players aren't willing, they don't have the same stride, they don't have the same stride or same willingness to put in that effort like he does, then you're not going to produce anything. But really, it's not just Aaron Donald. I mean, having Jalen Ramsey there, having Bobby Wagner there, I think we have so much star talent on the defensive side, and now we're starting to hit every level on the D line that you really have someone on every phase to kind of say, all right, how can I be better? How can I be better? When we were missing gaps here and there. So our defense is going to be a top 5 defense. I'm really liking the depth that we have. So as far as the defensive thing, I think we're really locked up. I loved what I saw, in person at the game from our defense. They were really the only reason why we were held to, the low scoring game that it was. But kind of going on the offensive side a little bit, going back to the first game, the Texans game. One of my big things is that backup quarterback position because we're all assuming Stafford's fine, but all those rumors about his elbow issue. So really, when they brought in, they said, all right, Wolford, you're going to play the first half. Perkins, you're going to play the second half. Now I know Wolford was up against their starters, their first team on the defense for the Texans, but man, he did not look good at all. You go back and you review the stats, and he got sacked 5 times. Now that's probably the offensive line, and that's kind of probably to blame. Our backup offensive line is kind of struggling a bit, and we definitely saw it in this Bengals game too. I'm still a Perkins believer. I think he deserves that QB2 role. Yes, he did not have a good performance, but he was the only reason why we got some points during this Bengals game. He's able to move around, and I think if he just had a better offensive line, he would have shined a lot better. But they really need to work on that, and we really need to work on this rushing. On paper, it looks nice that we had 117 yards, but that was 31 attempts. So when you only average 3.8, it really makes things difficult on your offense.
Yeah, my big takeaways is really you got to look at those players fighting for those bubble roster spots because a lot of these people won't make the team, right? So looking at this, like I think a lot of the D line players definitely showed out. It's gonna suck because we're gonna have to cut a few of them, and I don't think we're gonna get all of them through waivers. Hopefully we do. Looking at someone like McCutcheons, like what is there to say? He leads the league in wide or in receiving yards throughout the whole preseason. He's been great. I hope we get him on the roster because he's not going to get through waivers. I think that was pretty clear after the first game, and let alone through all 3 games. The backup QB spot is like I was buying into Perkins, but that game was so rough. And it wasn't even like he was going against the starters for the Bengals. Like, they didn't have starters in there, really. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, but they really didn't have any starters on the defensive side at all this game. It was mostly second stringers and then third stringers near the end of the match. And that's just not acceptable, even with the level of O-line play he was getting. Because he had throwing time, some of these passes, and they just weren't accurate, and that's not what I saw from last game. Like, he had pressure last game, but he was getting these short and moderate throws off. And you could see some improvement on those long balls, but he was struggling with those against the Texans. I didn't see a lot of accuracy at all against the Bengals, and that's worrying because if you get into a real NFL game, you got to be able to, in those crucial crunch moments when you're getting pressure on you, not make a mistake. And that's all I've seen from Wolford when he's been in big NFL games and moments. He's made mistakes, and we have won a game despite of that. But like, I haven't seen him do anything in a live NFL game, and I'm worried about Perkins after that match. So I would be lying if I wasn't sitting here saying I'm worried about the backup QB spot if Stafford goes down. So let's hope he doesn't. Moving on past that, running backs, nothing really to say about either games. Nothing going there. A lot of it, I wouldn't say it's on the running backs, but it's hard to tell. They did have some gaps, but they weren't really getting a lot of yards after contact. Like I believe you both mentioned, just yards per carry were not good in either game, and it hasn't really been for league wide for preseason. Um,
So real quick though, so just your guys' thoughts. Do we think Funk is going to make it? I mean, I thought that I felt like he was going to be a safe going before the preseason, but after this last game, it just seemed like he just got stonewalled after play after play, and then the fumbling. And what do you guys think? Do you think he makes it?
so with the health of both Henderson and Akers being like not great status, like they're not surefire to start 17 games. I definitely think we're going to go out and get other back. There's no way they're going to ride with just those two and roll of the dice. Sony Michelle got cut today, so I could potentially see them assigning him if he wants to go come for a vet minimum. There are other running backs in the market right now, potentially tradable. The Vikings' second running back, he's apparently up for trade. I see them more making that type of move versus trying to run with Funk. I just don't think Funk would be dependable enough if both Akers and Henderson went down. And then, like, in week 9 or 10, like, who are you going to rock with? You're going to have to go with some very, very old veteran who potentially doesn't know the offense at all.
How about you, Ramzilla? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
So with respect to Funk, I maybe have a different point of view, and that is, I believe his special teams aptitude keeps him on the team. I really do. You know, Joe DeCamillis loves Funk. We've only heard McVay praise him. The only way I see him, not on the roster is if we do go out and get, somebody who's tried and true and who frankly can play little special teams for us as well. McVay loves that. He wasn't super negative with respect to the fumbles after the game. In fact, with both fumbles, he said that it was just simply guys, putting forth some extra effort to get some extra yards. Obviously, that's not acceptable most of the time, but he definitely didn't crush those guys for losing the ball and those turnovers. So I think with respect to his special teams, contributions, I think we ride with those four backs, and fingers are crossed that we don't need our fourth stringer.
So you don't think that loading up on wide receiver and DBs with people who can also play special teams wouldn't hurt Funk potentially getting on the roster?
It just depends. I mean, if we're only keeping three, linebackers, you need a bigger body, which Funk has. You have wide receivers and cornerbacks that are more gunners, and you need those mid-level guys that can, Definitely stay in their lanes and not get pushed out of them, which often is the case with some smaller body guys.
All right, good stuff there, guys. Let's go to the news. Akers and Henderson, talking about running backs, returned to practice today. Um, I think I can speak for all of us. We hope they are healthy and they play every snap throughout the season. Um, I don't think that's realistic, but guys, your reactions to that news?
I'll let you go first, Ramzilla.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, I think uh, similarly as I spoke before, McVay loves what Kyron Williams offers. He can pass protect. He has experience literally sticking his face in the fan, and that's what they call it. Taking on linebackers, that are blitzing. Jordan Rodriguez said that he clearly looks like he belongs, and he played a lot, of course, last week, and she took a lot of notes with respect to him. So I still think we're in good hands. It's going to be a running back by committee. You're going to have a Henderson, you're going to have a dose of Akers, and you're probably going to see a dose of Williams as well. And I think between those three, we're able to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. It's going to be by committee. McVay's going to go through and he's going to find out how to work this running back. He did that when Akers first came in, and we saw a lot of potential out of him. It was slow to start, but as the weeks progressed, he got better and better and better. And yeah, I think it's a good thing for Henderson and a good thing for Akers to get back on the field, be full participants. We knew they were never going to play any of the preseason games, and just trying to, it's just kind of with Stafford. They're just trying to, ease them in. Don't want to overdo it. They don't want to, a Cam Akers situation like last year where, he gets injured before the first game. So they're just taking their time, keeping it cautious with them, and I'm hope that Akers especially can really pull out to do great things this year.
Yep. Now let's talk about former Rams offensive coordinator Ernie Zampese. Hoping I'm saying that.
Zampese.
Zampese.
Yeah.
He passed away at the age of 86. He kind of came near the latter half of the 80s, and the Rams offense was pretty solid under him. It's before the Rams really collapsed and kind of went down their lull in the 90s or mid 90s. Your guys' reaction to that? We all kind of hope his family's doing well. Really wrote his name in the Rams history books.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump in there. With respect to Ernie Zampese, absolutely love him. He was an innovator, legendary with his offensive play calling. You look at that 1989 year where we made an incredible run, and if it weren't for the Niners up north, I think we're Super Bowl champions that year. His offense was incredible. And this is in a time where we weren't absolutely seeing the ball slung around, and offenses didn't have the advantage of some of the rules that are now in place to help offenses. But you look at Jim Everett, he threw for 4,300 yards that year, 29 touchdowns. You had Greg Bell with 1,300 yards rushing and 15 touchdowns. Absolutely awesome. You had two receivers with over 1,000 yards, Flipper Anderson with 1,100 and Henry Ellard with 1,300 yards. So absolutely love him. And in fact, have to throw this out there. One of my former coaches actually played for Ernie Zampese while he was at San Diego State University. And whether it's a good habit or not, he said that you could always tell it was Ernie because he always had several cigarettes in his mouth calling plays, and he would go through several packs, and said that the offensive coordinator booth was just literally a cloud of smoke. But we love Ernie, and as you mentioned, definitely wish his family peace and our condolences.
Yeah, could you guys imagine if McVay smoked? That guy would chain smoke like 5 packs a day.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's kind of crazy I mean, yeah, definitely condolences to his family, but, kind of taking a little bit from him that, he was considered the offensive genius of his time, just kind of similar to McVay and, taking a team who, I just was doing some research on him, but took his offense that was ranked 17th in the league to becoming third best in scoring and then second best the next year. So he did a lot for this Rams offense in those years he was with them. So definitely respect for him.
Mhm. Yep, definitely a legend. And hopefully they do something this season to kind of honor him and his passing. All right, guys, let's talk about everyone's favorite type of topic, and that's the NFL Top 100. And this has some interesting takes from the NFL players. This is all NFL player driven. And, for the most part, I think they relatively do a better job than most outlets will do, because outlets really do stuff for clicks and stuff like that. And generally, I feel like the NFL player list is a little bit more retrospective what a player did for that season. That's not always true. Like I disagree with some of the rankings on this list, but generally, I think it's a solid list and of what these players did last year. Um, Coming in at 90, you have Odell. You have Wagner at 29, Stafford at 27, Ramsey coming in at the top 10 at 9, Cup coming in at 4 after not being ranked at all last year, and then Aaron Donald at 2, losing out to Tom Brady. Ramzilla, what really jumps out to you for these Rams players? The Rams are the third most team with the most players with 5. It would have been 6, I believe, if Whitworth didn't retire, but it's 5. Still impressive, nevertheless, compared to other teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been years where we had nobody in the top 100. So to have 5 and then 6 with Odell, it's incredible, and it speaks to the great work that Les Snead has done and his scouting team and the entire recruiting of the organization. But you look at it, Ramsey was the top DB ranked, Cup was the top wide receiver ranked, and of course Aaron Donald was the top defensive lineman ranked. And you can argue all you want. Some people are arguing, of course, that Adams should have been ahead of Cup, and you can argue, of course, that AD is the number one player, and he's definitely number one in our hearts without any question. That's not even to be argued, at least in my book. But honestly, guys, it's a freaking opinion. What matters is who has a ring or not at the end of the day. And so any type of midseason, team rankings or, player rankings, it's all opinion. And of course it gets people talking and it's fun. But frankly, it really doesn't matter. What matters is at the end of the day, who's holding the Lombardi.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree with everything you said. This is all opinion based. It kind of gives you a little bit more of like their recognition, like they worked hard and they got on this list. I mean, like you said, to have 5, if you count Odell, you can put him at 6. Is great for the Rams organization. Having 3, I mean, the stat was there's never been 3 players from the same team in the top 9. So I mean that's just a good recognition for the Rams organization. It's a good recognition for these players themselves. So I like it better because this is more player driven. I got to go back and this morning I went through and I was watching a lot of the videos, especially for AD, Cup, and Ramsey, and just what the other players had to say about them. It's just really cool to hear. I mean, like I said, you could listen to Pat McAfee, you could listen to whoever you want. Um, any news article, things like that, and get their opinion on things. But sometimes it's really cool to kind of get to hear from the players who go up against them. With Ramsey, listening to
DK Metcalf.
Metcalf, listening to Metcalf, talk highly about him, and going through all these other things. It's like, it's just good. It's cool to hear other players from other teams, really talk about these players in a high thinking.
Yeah, you guys are definitely on spot. I mean, it ultimately has as much value as you put into it. Um, I mean, I think it is a little silly to put Tom Brady at number one. I get it. He's very old. He's doing great for his age. It will probably never be done again what he is doing at his age. I understand that. It just from my point of view, if you're going by pure statistics, I think there's no argument, at least in my eyes, that Cooper Kupp should be the most valued player for what he did in his position compared to his peers that year was very, very impressive. And if you're talking about impact on the game, I think it's no question last year Aaron Donald had so much impact on. If you remove him from our team, uh we lose a lot more games. If you remove him just from the playoffs, we do not even get past the divisional. I think the wild card is a lot closer. That is so integral how much he is to our team, and how, like, people don't understand how much other defenses have to purely game plan for him because he is that good. And we will never see a defensive player as good as him probably in our lifetimes. And that just to me says a lot. It's still neat to see what they say about him, and he still got second for a second year in a row. Nevertheless, it's a great accomplishment, and it's going to be hard to see how he tops it even more, and I think he can. So, guys, we'll go ahead and roll into our kind of predictions for the upcoming season, starting off at week 14. Um, this ending of the season, guys, it's a rough one. So we ended with week 13. We'll be picking up at week 14. So Raiders at Rams. That is a Thursday night football game. So it is coming off of a Sunday night. So only 4 days in between the two. Uh, Guys, what's your initial just reaction to this kind of end of the season? You get Raiders, then you get Packers, you get Broncos, and then you get Chargers, and then at the very end you get the Seahawks. Not as big of a deal, but what do you guys think of that 4 game stretch?
Go ahead, Ramzilla.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a gauntlet, right? And it's not going to be a cakewalk by any means. I mean, every one of these teams uh, definitely have a lot to offer, and absolutely are tough. So it's going to be a challenge without a doubt. And if we can get through this, it's going to put us in a great position for the playoffs.
Yeah, for me, this is the true test. Um, I could see this be our November of last year. Um,
Mm,
in this December, I mean, I think we were gonna win at Seattle, but then 4 days later we have to go against the Raiders, and a short period of time after that we have to go up and go to Green
Lambo.
Bay,
Yeah.
and that's going to be those two weeks are going to be a gauntlet. Um, Other than
And
that,
Broncos
I
at
think
Christmas.
Broncos at Christmas, I feel like that's a little bit more doable. Even the Chargers, I mean, those are going to be two, quote unquote home games. Um, so I feel a little bit more confident on those in the last three, but I really think the Raiders and the Green Bay are going to be the two big challenges of that
Mhm.
period.
So let's go into the Raiders while you're bringing them up. The Raiders ended up 10-7 last year. Very, very impressive year considering everything that happened with John Gruden, and then losing a premier wide receiver because of that person doing really, really tragic things, making a huge mistake, losing their lives because of that mistake. Um, you put that all together, that's a lot of drama to go through, and I think we all have like gone through a little bit of drama in the workplace. I can't imagine going through something like that at the workplace and then having to perform um in front of everyone while dealing with all that in the background. And I thought Rich Bisaccia did a fantastic job with this team to get them back in playoff contention and even make the playoffs, which is wild and nuts. They finished 10-7. They ended up firing John Gruden halfway through. And then over the offseason, they hired Josh McDaniels. They end up signing Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones, even getting Rock Ya-Sin. Draft wise, nothing huge. They got Zamir White, and they end up losing Yannick Ngakwe and Zay Jones are the really two names that kind of pop out to me. Uh, Zach, this is a Raiders team that has been through a lot in the last 2 years. How do you think they're going to handle this upcoming season with Josh McDaniels, a very big name, but hasn't really proven anything in the NFL as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, once we get to week 14, this is all guess. We could do a pretty good job of trying to analyze the first few games, and once you start getting into the last quarter of these games, it gets difficult. We don't know how, we don't know what the health of each team is going to look like and things like that. So we're kind of taking things based on, what we see now and, maybe a little bit of potential of some weaknesses down the road. I think this is going to be, I could see this definitely being a shootout. We're not going to be dealing like we are next week in cold temperatures. So that's a plus. So I definitely think this could be a close game, but I think it's a game that we have a good potential of losing. Especially with them picking up Devontae Adams. I mean, definitely no question that he's top top five, top three wide receiver in the league, and um, I think he has the potential to tip the scales a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last year they were 18th in offense and 26th in defense. So average offense and a pretty bad defense. Zilla, how do you think this team is going to fare
Yeah,
this upcoming season?
absolutely. I mean, look, the Raiders, I think, have a decent um, decent staff that they've assembled, and also a great roster. They're going to be coming off a total barn burner against the Chargers the week before. So we're coming off of Seattle. They're coming off of a division game against the Chargers. Look, they're big three. You have Adams, Renfro, Waller. Great tight end. We've shown that there have been times we've struggled against tight ends. That may change this season. I do have questions about their O line. You have Leatherwood. That's there's been discussions about them getting rid of him. A high draft pick. Jacobs at running back. There's been questions about him. But on defense, they added Chandler Jones, who's a baller, and you have Max Crosby, who can get pressure on the quarterback as well. But in the end, I feel good about this one. I think the Rams match up well for the most part, and I think we take it to them. Rams 35, Raiders 21.
Mm-hmm. Are you sold on Josh McDaniels as a head coach? of the Raiders? Because I honestly think they should have gave it to the interim head coach from last year.
He's done some great things. I know he's learned a lot. At one point he was an offensive coordinator for the Rams, if you remember. Obviously, he was a head coach for the Broncos. In both cases, he ended up back with New England. I think he's learned a lot. I think he's surrounded himself with some good people. He is trying to do things supposedly the Patriot way, which can get some coaches into trouble. I think he'll have a better, definitely a better result this time around because of the talent that he has. He has a good quarterbacking Carr, who's absolutely solid. So he's not starting with Tim Tebow as his quarterback, for the Raiders.
Yeah, I definitely think the Raiders have a solid roster, but it feels like a team that is still missing a piece or two, especially on the defense. And I think they haven't really done a lot to address the defense. They could be a very similar team to the Chargers of last year, where their offense could possibly be like the eight or ninth best offense, but their defense really lacks, especially in big down situations, and they will probably lose a good amount of close games because of that. I think they're going to be in almost every game, but I don't think they're going to win a lot of those close games. So I definitely have the Rams winning 30-20. I just don't have a lot of faith in Josh McDaniels. I hear what you're saying, Zilla, with apparently he said he's grown, that he's trying to implement the Patriot way. I just haven't seen that work anywhere else outside of Belichick and New England. It just hasn't. So it remains to be seen. Zach, what's your prediction score-wise?
So my prediction, even though, like I said, I think this is a short week, because this is a short week, I think the Rams are still gonna edge it out. I think it could be close. Like I said, I was torn going both ways, just because of how this month is going to go. But I do think they're gonna edge it out. I'm gonna go say 35-27 Rams.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to what I think will be a very, very interesting game, a game that brings up a lot of bad memories from 2020 season, losing in the not wild card, the divisional, to the Packers and one-handed Goff. Zilla, this Packers team, their defense stayed mostly intact, but their offense lost a big playmaker in Devontae Adams. How do you think the Packers react to that? Not really filling that void at all. Wide receiver. Do you think they drop at all in quality this year?
I do. And frankly, I see a couple of other teams in their division taking a step up. You have O'Connell now with the Vikings. You even see the Lions. I do think the Packers take a step back. You still have LaFleur, who is a fantastic coach. You have Joe Barry, defensive coordinator. But I do see them struggling. And against McVay, McVay has not beat LaFleur yet. And so I think this is his opportunity. You have the Packers, of course, on Monday night. It's a night game. It's December 19th. It's going to be freezing cold. Green Bay's coming off a bye. The Rams, of course, are coming off a mini bye, playing on Thursday. So they have a couple of extra days. Not sure that will have a major impact. It may, though. Joe Barry's defense doesn't scare me, frankly. At this point, I don't think it will scare McVay. I think he's definitely going to bring it. My concern is the field condition, and is the field going to be muddy? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be wet? Are we able to grind the ball, run the ball? Do we have mutters on the team? We really don't. We have a lot of scat backs and smaller backs. where they have some plotters. So that might be a concern. Um, so I think we have an opportunity. I believe, I really do. I believe McVay finds a way to get it done. Rams 24, Green Bay 23.
Oh, what a squeaker.
Yep.
When you said the mud, I mean, that definitely throws something. Like you said, the weather conditions there can be anything during that time period. And, as you mentioned, I'm concerned. We have running backs with bad knees and, are supposedly, A-list running backs. So, that worries me a little bit if it's rainy terrain. But I think who also has something to prove is Aaron Donald. I mean, we remember back in 2020. I mean, that was the one-handed golf, but that was also when Aaron Donald, he got injured that game, and I think he really was not happy about that. And I think he has something to prove. And if there's one person in the entire NFL you do not want to make mad, as we clearly saw last week, it is Aaron Donald.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you, Zach. Oh, sorry.
So I guess I should give my prediction. So based on that, we do have a time to recover. It's going to come down to weather conditions. So again, purely guess, but I will say the Rams are going to win 21-17.
The Packers come off of a bye too, which I actually think plays into the Rams' favor. But I agree with you guys. I think it's a big loss losing Devontae Adams because really they were mostly Devontae Adams driven when their offense was clicking. It was big plays to Adams. It was very much like how Cup in certain segments of the season was like the main engine of our offense, the connection between the QB and the number one wide receiver. And I just don't see any of the wide receivers they've gotten, like Juju. I don't see how they replace him at all. I just don't see it clicking the way it did with Devontae Adams. Now, they still have a Hall of Fame QB. They're still going to be dangerous. And they definitely will pick off some good teams. But I think they're going to struggle in their division this year. I think the Vikings going to give them a run for their money. Vikings have had a great roster for 4 or 5 years. They just lose a ton of close games, and I don't think it's going to be that same way this upcoming year. So I have the Rams winning 14-13 in a very, very narrow, close game. Now let's move back to California, or sorry, yeah, back to California where the Rams will host the Broncos on Christmas Day. Zilla, are you looking forward to opening up a nice gift of a W on Christmas morning?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas to Russell Wilson again from Aaron Donald and our defensive line. Um, Look, the Broncos are going to play the Arizona Cardinals the week before. Obviously, we're coming off a tough win in Lambeau. Now, here's what's interesting about this game. They have our former Rams secondary coach, Ejiro Evero, who absolutely is a stud. He's now their defensive coordinator. So he's definitely going to bring his own tricks to that Fangio defense, who most recently left. They also have our former assistant defensive line coach, Marcus Dixon, to coach up their D line. They have Nathaniel Hackett, who is coming from the Packers. Their run game has always been incredibly strong. I don't know what it is, man. They just put anybody back there and they get 1,000 yards. They have a great offensive line, and of course, Russell Wilson, Judy, Sutton, as far as wide receivers go. And then on defense, Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory on the edges. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to grind it out. Rams 20, Broncos 17.
Yeah, a lot of people have said this roster was a QB away from really, really competing. Zach, what's your take on Russell Wilson moving to the Broncos and this Broncos defense being third in the NFL last year, but their offense being 23rd, causing them not to make the playoffs? Do you think they are Russell Wilson away from making a playoff run?
I don't know. I mean, I think what they're trying, I mean, it seems like they're trying to pull a Peyton Manning, like, let's pull a quarterback that we know can do something and, it's going to work this time. And, it was successful back then with Peyton Manning. I don't know if it's going to be successful with Russell Wilson. Um, he's a great quarterback. I don't see that offense growing exponentially. Um, and I could be completely wrong, but definitely up against the Rams, I don't see it. I think Russell Wilson is still terrified of Aaron Donald, and that whole week, just think going to bed on Christmas Eve, and you have to think about Aaron Donald coming down your chimney, is pretty terrifying if you ask me. So we need to make a poster card during Christmas about that. Put a pin in that. Anyways, I think this is going to be a Rams win. I think it's going to be 24-21 Rams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Aaron Donald will definitely bring his sack. Uh, oh gosh, I'm terrible. Uh, yeah, I think this is going to be a really good team. I think they are my pick to win the AFC West. It's going to be a close race between them and the Chargers. But it's just, I think Wilson was carrying that Seahawks team for so long, and they just had such a terrible O-line the last 2 years. I think this Broncos line, while it's not great, I think it's like average to above average. I think it's good enough that Wilson will see a lot better play this year. And I think they're going to give us a run for money. I have the Rams winning 27-24 in a very close shootout. Not shootout, but really close game. Good competitive game. And we all can open up presents very happy afterwards. Staying at SoFi while being away for reasons, we are facing the Chargers. Last year they were a top 5 offense, having the 5th in the entire NFL, while their defense was bottom 3. Very weird year seeing that they got Brandon Staley, which was the hallmark of him was coming off of a number 1 defensive year with the Rams the year prior, as we all know. Zilla, what do you make of this Chargers team? Because they did get a lot of good signings. They got Khalil Mack, they got J.C. Jackson, Mike Williams, and even our old friend Everett. They didn't really lose anyone, especially. Like, what do you make of this team, and why was it such a weird year from Brendan Staley, being a defensive guru and like having a terrible defense?
Yeah, I mean, look, on paper, these guys are paper champions. I mean, they are loaded on both sides of the ball now, especially picking up Mac. They've got Bosa, of course, Derwin James. So, Staley's got his fantastic 3 or terrific 3, whatever, on defense. Their offense is just awesome. They've really bolstered that offensive line. Last year they were similar to the Vikings. Close games, came down to the wire. Some interesting decisions made. Lost them some games. They did have some injuries as well, which hindered them. But this game's going to be crazy. The Chargers, they're coming off a game against the Colts at the Colts. Frankly, guys, I think this is going to be the equivalent to the Anchorman free-for-all. I mean, you're going to see, and I don't condone this by any means, but you're going to see guys with horses, nets, tridents, chains, bedposts, whips, et cetera, et cetera. there's some competitive juices flowing between McVay and Staley. I don't doubt that for a second. Um, and one of the reasons why I believe that may be the case is I noticed something interesting after the preseason game at midfield. You had McVay and Staley come out for the midfield handshake, and that literally is all it was. It was the quickest handshake you could ever see in your life. Much different than the handshake at the middle of the field with Zach Taylor, where you had the hug, the embrace, this quick discussion. So there might be some competitive elements there. And if you remember, Staley left after 1 year, and he tried to take O'Connell with him. And this is the only time that McVay has denied that opportunity for one of his coaches to move on. So anyway, I'm not going to read anything more into it. They're both competitive. I definitely know that. McVay said that Staley was quote sick like him with respect to his passion for the game. So it's going to be tough. It is absolutely going to be a backyard brawl. And I do think the Chargers come out ahead. Chargers 30, Rams 24.
Yeah, what do you think about this matchup, Zach? The Chargers have a great young QB. I would argue top three young QB in the league. I He has definitely great attributes to his game in both his first and second year, and I think he's going to be even better this third year. And they have awesome amount of weapons on offense and defense. Um, how do you think they match up against us, and how is Staley gonna do in his second year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Staley's going to be primed to be better than he was last year. I mean, like I said, he was a great he's a great defensive mind, and to be ranked 29th of 32 is, he's not gonna allow that to happen again. Um, this is a tough one. I can see this go both ways. I can see the Chargers definitely coming out and making their stand. Um, you know, I see our offense also firing on all cylinders because, like I said, I don't think McVay wants to lose to anyone who's under his tree, and it's 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 gonna be like I said, it's just gonna be a weird game. They're both gonna be at home. This is New Year's Day, so it's just gonna be an odd game. Um, I think they're gonna squeak this one out. Um, I'll give this one to the Rams, but it's going to be close. It's going to be 24-23.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. It's gonna be I think it's gonna be more of a meaningful game for the Chargers than us. Especially with the fact that we play the Seahawks next. I just don't think the Chargers can afford to let up any games. Um, and I do think the Chargers end up winning this one 20-17. I think it's another close game, but this one we just let it slip by. Do you guys have a good nickname for this cross city rival? For this game. There's been a few floating around there. You guys have anything on top of your head? I personally like what they call it in the MLS, and it's called El Trafico in MLS between the two LA teams. You guys have anything that kind of pops out to you for the name of this game?
Not off the top of my head. I got to think about it now.
Got nothing, man.
Well, maybe in a future pod, when we preview this game before it happens, we'll cross that. We'll cover that question again. Um, let's move on to the last game of the year. The Seattle Seahawks, Rams at Seattle. Um, last divisional game. Um, we've already talked about this foe before. Zillow, what's your initial reaction from what you think the Seahawks will be, because you weren't on our pod when we talked about them, or actually you were. Sorry, I was thinking of the Cardinals. But in general, where do you think the Seattle team will be at the end of the year?
It's going to be a struggle. Look, you don't lose two perennial Pro Bowlers and future Hall of Famers, and just um, you know continue to progress. They're going to have some growing pains. We've seen their quarterback situation, and where that's at, and obviously they do have some talent. DK Metcalf is an absolute stud. He does a fantastic job and always plays us hard. They do have a good coaching staff, so I don't think they're just going to fall over. But it's definitely going to be a struggle. And as far as this game goes, the Rams could possibly be playing for something or not playing for something, as we've seen McVay do in the past, where he may not start some of his starters. Frankly, if we are playing for something, Rams win 30-17. And if we are not playing for something, Rams win 21-17.
I'm exactly on your same wavelength. I mean, it all comes down to where we're sitting at the end of this. I mean, if like you said, if we've already locked our spot, then I think we are. We're playing second string. Perkins, Wolford. I'm biased. I'm going to say Perkins, but is going to be out there. If not, then they're going to dominate this game. So like you, I think it can go even higher. I think we're going 35-17. And if for some reason we're not, I think then the Seahawks would take it, and by, I would say, probably 17-14.
Yeah, I don't see us necessarily blowing out the Seahawks, especially given the context of the game. Um, Even if it's one of the games we need, as soon as we get like a three-score lead, just like how we did with the Texans, and I believe I can't remember second team, but once we got a comfortable lead, we just put in the second stringers and we kind of just coasted to win. Um, I think we won't even have any first stringers in this game. I don't think it'll matter. I think we will have the first seed locked up by this time. And I think we lose 24-17 to the Seahawks with our backups playing a majority of their starters. So I think it'll be kind of a wind down game for our team heading into a bye for the playoffs, and our first Rams number one seed in a long time. And hopefully, we do not follow the Packers mold of choking as the number one seed. So, Zach, Zilla, I have the Rams going 13-4. Can you just say your entire uh, season score prediction, and we'll kind of end the pod after that.
I did
Yeah,
not tally what mine was.
I'll jump in there. I think we're going to be 11-6. And I know this is unpopular, but I think our floor is 10-7. And I think our ceiling 13-4. Again, a lot can happen between now and the end of the season, as we've seen, just in the past 5 years with McVay. There's no doubt in my mind that he and Les Snead are not going to just sit and wait around. So if players are available mid-season, we're going to pick them up. Do we get Odell around November? At this point, he has there's no benefit to him signing with anybody. his agent's brilliant. He's brilliant. He's going to wait and see what happens. Maybe October timeframe, he ends up signing with somebody, maybe a little bit earlier, so he can get in into the playbook, etc. But yeah, again, my prediction 11-6.
No, I definitely think that window you put, I think it's perfectly fine to say like 11-6. Like, it's a tough schedule. It's a very hard schedule. It's not like we're playing last year's schedule or the year before. We're going against the hardest division in football in the AFC West, and we still have to play the Cardinals and 49ers, two not bad teams at all. Like, we don't have an easy division, and we definitely don't have an easy schedule. So it's perfectly, I think, reasonable to look at that schedule and say that's prediction. What about you, Zach? Where are
Yeah,
you at?
yeah, I'm thinking, I go back through and I look at my scores, and a lot of these games, I'm hopeful. I have a lot more hope in some of these games when we kind of break them down. Thinking of it as a whole, I'm with Ramzilla. I think we could easily win 13 games. I'm probably sitting at the 12-5 right now. But anything can happen at any point in the game. You lose one player and it can alter things. So hopefully not. Hopefully we can keep our team healthy for the season and be able to get back into the playoffs and go run it back. Well, closing things up, is anyone else in the mood for some pizza? Because looks like Little Caesars is now the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, and Matthew Stafford, along with Rampage. Rampage isn't getting enough love off of that TV spot. But any thoughts about that new commercial with Matthew Stafford, and
I
Rampage?
think Stafford has a potential to go into Hollywood after his quarterbacking career is over and he retires. He does good in these little commercial spots, and he has good comedic timing.
And all I will say is pizza!
Hey, I think it's better than Papa John's. I'm not a Papa John's fan, so I'm definitely glad that they've decided to move on from them.
I think almost all those pizza joints, their pizza tastes like cardboard. So I will refrain from this conversation.
For sure, but did Little Caesars did save me a lot of money during college.
That is true, and it probably also costed you a lot of time in the bathroom because of it.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to wrap this episode up of the East Coast Rams podcast. You can always send questions and feedback to feedback@eastcoastrams.com or hit us up on Twitter. We finished out our predictions. We made it through before kickoff of the NFL regular season, which is just 10 days away from the time that we record this podcast. Let us know about the rest of our predictions and provide your own. Our official Twitter account is at East Coast Rams, but you can also find me at Zac Mayer and Ashton at Rams Fan Ashton. And a big shout out to our special guest Ramzilla. You can follow him on Twitter at is it Ellister? Is that how you say it?
Elitster.
How do you pronounce that?
Elitster.
Elitster. All right. Anything else you want to do before we sign off?
Hey, I will be there in person on September 8th. Absolutely going nuts, going crazy, losing my mind, cheering for our Rams. Go Rams. Let's go Ramily.
Ashton, anything left for you?
No, man, I'm looking forward to the season. It's going to be a great schedule, and no matter what, even if we lose every game, I don't think that will happen, but if it did, you guys can all yell at me now for saying that, but hey, we're world champs. A lot of teams and a lot of fan bases would kill to be in our position. So I'm pretty chill this season, Zach, and I'm just looking forward to watching some football.
Awesome. Yeah, football's back, baby, and we're just gonna take it week by week. Uh, we'll be back every week to wrap up the game previous, and then we'll talk about the game upcoming. So, big thanks to everyone who comes out and listens and interacts with us. Had some great feedback from stuff that we've done on the Twitter account and even on our personal pages. Had a lot of fun. Recreating Aaron Donald's, two double fisting Bengals helmets. So we'll have to talk about that sometime. But uh, you know, if you take a couple minutes, please review, share this podcast with fellow Rams fans. We want to spread the love and spread this content out. And with that, I'm just going to say, whose house? Rams house.